You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
We are at the time of year where we were talking about it right before we called you, Ryan. We think, by the way, Eric and Ryan Robinson, this is College Football Talk with Eric and Ryan, our weekly look at college football through kind of a Central Indiana perspective, Notre Dame, IU kind of thing, a little bit of Purdue. But looks like IU's in the playoffs, right? I mean, unless we have two teams leap them, they're in, right?
I think IU is in, definitely. We were talking a minute ago. I think there could be an example if Clemson wins, that could bounce maybe an Alabama out, who is currently number 11, I believe. That's really the only scenario I think that's going to throw things off. The Big 12 championship game, both teams are ranked outside of the top 12, but they do have Arizona State already in there at number 12, I believe.
So it will be one of the two.
Yeah, the winner of that game is going to be in, and the loser wasn't in to begin with anyway. So
now seeding could be completely different because of these games, but we pretty much have an idea, except for a couple, Ryan, where we're certain that it's either going to be either or, you know, like that one. But for the most part, we know who's in.
Right. And if the favored team wins each game beginning tomorrow night with Boise State and UNLV, things will be a lot simpler come Sunday when that selection show reveals the top 12. But as Eric mentioned, you know, if you have, let's say Clemson wins and then UNLV beats Boise State, that Georgia, Alabama, and IU are all going to be kind of puckering a little bit, I think, because if Clemson beats SMU's still only going to have 2 losses. Alabama's got 3. Even though on a head-to-head, we think Alabama can beat SMU. I think all of us would agree on
Depends
that.
on the week with Alabama.
It does, but, you know, it's going to come down to the committee, and what you want is to solidify your spot on the field and not leave it in the committee's hand. And if you got UNLV, Clemson winning, it's going to kind of take it out of your control. You're going to be on pins and needles waiting for that show on Sunday.
And there's no way it's going to go as we expect, not this college football season.
No, there's going to be something that's going to be a twist or a turn that, you know, it's going to be up for debate. Social media is going to be all in an uproar, and then people are going to be crying. We went from 4 teams to 12. Now they're going to say, well, I told you we should have done 18 teams or 24 teams. So no one's ever going to be happy with the scenario.
Well, it should be 24 teams, but...
well, I think 12 teams was a great start, and I think it's made this year fantastic for me. From a
podcasters will be talking about it and all that stuff. It'll give us a lot to talk about, that's for sure. Let's hope something fun happens. Earlier in the week, I got a text from Eric saying he wants 10 minutes on Notre Dame at the beginning, so... Was it 10 or was it more?
I don't know. I could talk for about an hour, I think.
Go.
I just want to, so we'll circle back to what really got me riled up Saturday with Ohio State, Michigan. The whole flag planting thing these teams are trying to do. It really made me get on my pride and really eliminate the wins and losses of being a Notre Dame fan and just look at the program and look at our leadership. I mean, I'm really proud to be a fan of Notre Dame University and that football program. And I can't say enough good things about Marcus Freeman and how good of hands that program is in and those kids are in with having him as the leader of the program. When you looked at the end of that Ohio State game and you got Sharon Moore over there, the face of your program, running over and waving bye-bye to the Ohio State crowd. That's such a joke. It's pathetic. And then then the fight breaks out, and I mean, you have kids getting pepper sprayed on the field. Give me a break, man. But you want that? You don't want to condone that type of behavior. But look at the leadership. The coach is over there waving bye-bye and talking smack to the crowd. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe it. I think, I mean, I have to go against Michigan because I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I'm not. I have great friends who are Michigan fans. And if you're a fan and you even condone that or think it's cool, you're the problem too. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was watching.
I do not disagree.
And then the Big Ten hands out a $100,000 fine to each team. That's pathetic too. There's players on those teams making 10 times as much as what the Big Ten fined the whole university for that brawl. You know, and that set the tone for the whole day because the rest of the games, at the end of every game, there you had the winning team going and trying to plant a flag on the other team's 50-yard line. Michigan State tried doing this at South Bend twice 15 years ago. Nothing good ever comes of it. It's a total act of disrespect. And kudos to the Michigan player. I forget his name. We can find it. But one of the Michigan kids even stepped up after the game and was like, you know, we had 60 minutes to fight. Now you want to wait until after the game and do something so disrespectful, you know? I mean, kudos to him. He gets it. So I know kids on Michigan do get it. But when I look at this Notre Dame team, you listen to these kids after the game. These kids are so dialed in and locked in on their education and the football aspect and the team aspect. It's just great. Riley Leonard mentioned every day Coach Freeman walks into the building, we know who's in charge. Instantly, we know who's in charge. He's the leader, and he is the face of our program, and those players love him. Everything he's doing for Notre Dame, it's just on the field, off the field, being a leader of young men. I can't say enough about it. I got on my high horse Saturday. I'm getting on it again. I'm just really proud. I'm proud to be a Notre Dame fan and a huge fan of Marcus Freeman.
You're not wrong. Real fast, I want your reaction, Ryan. But if you're a coach who has never said to your players, none of that planting the flag stuff, none of that stuff. If you're a coach that's never said that to your team, you're the problem.
Totally agree, 100%.
Well, I thought I've never been a Steve Sarkisian fan, but he summed it up great in his press conference when he said, you know, after they had that close win Saturday night against A&M, he said that wasn't going to happen because he told his players, we're going to win with class, and we're not going to disrespect the program by causing a scene like that on the field. So he said that's something that he'll never allow a team of his to do. And he said it's not called for in today's game, and nothing good comes of it. I don't know how close you guys watch the videos, but I was watching it with a coworker, and there were some innocent people, some staff members that could have got really hurt by these kids. You got 6'5", 6'6" linemen, and they're just throwing and tossing people, and you got these staffers that are, trying to get the heck out of the way. There's just nothing good that's going to come from it, and I agree with Eric as far as Marcus Freeman and him being in charge, but he's not the only one. Sarkisian really surprised me. I've never been a big fan of his, but he said all the right things in his press conference, and I think it's going to be a precedent moving forward where not just the flag planting, but the field storming. That's another situation that needs to be addressed. So proud to be a Notre Dame fan and glad we don't have to worry about that kind of nonsense.
Right, and shame on the Big Ten. We'll wrap it up with, shame on the Big Ten. $100,000 fine. That's ridiculous. Fine them $5 million each, and any player that touches a flag or even is involved in this, give him 6-game suspension. Stop it. If you want to stop it, you can stop it, and that's what it's going to take.
I do want to say one thing in defense of Ohio State and Michigan. Most of the kids out there were more interested in stopping it than being involved in it. So it wasn't the entire program, but those few who acted like that gave them a black eye. I think it's fair to say that most of those kids out there were not involved in that. All right, now let's talk some Notre Dame football. Ryan, your thoughts on the performance on Saturday?
Well, I spoke with Eric earlier in the game, and I said, all we got to do is get out there with the win. I don't care by how many points, how cute or ugly it was. that game went exactly like I thought it was going to go. We are going to have to go in there and play really hard for 4 quarters and survive, and that's what they did. I know the score isn't indicative of what that game was really like, but USC hung in there for about 3.5 quarters, and it was kind of mesmerizing to see their offense move the ball that easy on our defense. But you're going to have games like that, and especially in rivalry games, it's going to happen. So we saw it with Georgia and Florida, 2 teams that should not even be on the same level, but it just happens with those games. So Notre Dame was able to pull out the win, and that's all we needed to do. We had to get to 11 wins, get out there, and wait for the playoff scenario.
Yeah, and I think with USC moving the ball, I think it says a lot more about their quarterback than it does our defense. It surely looks like USC has found their quarterback of the future. That kid looks really good, a true freshman. But I think just looking at Notre Dame and finishing out 11-1, I think they're the hottest team in the country. I don't know who is playing better than Notre Dame right now. And you look at what they've done with the injuries to Benjamin Morrison, Howard Cross. You look at Donovan Hennish and how he's playing on that defensive line. You got Leonard Moore and Christian Gray who have stepped in and are playing lights out. Christian Gray kind of got picked on there at the USC game, but he made a huge pick six towards the end, and he's been really good for Notre Dame the last 4 games. Next man up mentality. Notre Dame is really talented and well coached. I'm ready for the playoffs. I mean, bring it on. Home game next. I think as it stands, I think they play Saturday the 21st if they don't move seeding wise, but we'll have to see. But I know I saw an interview earlier today, Marcus Freeman talking about who he wanted to play, and he said all the right things, like, oh, we just we'll prepare for whoever, but he ended up by saying it'd be nice if one of the teams from the South would come up and play. He thought that would be a good advantage for Notre Dame. So right now they're matched up with Alabama, and I think I think he would love to see it stay that way. I would too. I would love to see Alabama come up here.
And then also during that game, we were texting throughout, and I said it's Xavier Watts time. that kid, I mean, go with who got you there. And Xavier Watts he's a baller, and he gets the pick six there towards the end of the game, and he was making tackles all over the field. So I just love that kid. Yeah. He's been steady, and this Notre Dame defense, they're going to be a tough matchup for anyone in this playoff. And I agree with Eric that I think we're the hottest team. And I'm kind of, Brayton was making fun of me because I said, dude, this could be the year we get the national championship. And of course he thinks I'm crazy, but I think we can line up and play with anybody.
And it's year
the
number 3.
The first ever national championship, by the way, in my opinion.
What's that?
It's the first ever true national championship, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's not BCS points, and it's not only 4 teams. So this is like a true standard of a national championship.
That's right. In every other sport at every other level.
Yep, I would agree.
Yep, and again, Marcus Freeman, year 3. So we said that's one of the things we talked about earlier.
Yeah. We'll need to go back and get your predictions early in the season and have a podcast and go over them and talk and laugh about it. Because some of mine were horrible, like saying IU would be at the end of the Big Ten.
Well, one of the things I said, and probably after the Notre Dame loss, is, hey, all these voters and everyone, prognosticators, they have short-term memory. So to lose in week 3 against Northern Illinois and then run the table, blowing everyone out, there's no way you could get them all the way to a number 4 ranking and then even talk about leaving them out of the playoff. So, you still hear some of the talking heads saying Notre Dame could get left out. There's absolutely zero chance they get left out. Not after you've rewarded them for 10 weeks from that loss against Northern Illinois.
Absolutely. You're nuts if you think they're not getting in and don't deserve to be in. The resume they put together hasn't been tremendous, but it certainly has been as good as anybody else. Maybe Oregon and Texas, that's it. I mean, those 2 resumes are the best of everybody, but Notre Dame's can stack up against anybody else. All right, now let's talk about Michigan and Ohio State, the game, and the implications that it has on the Big Ten, the playoffs, all that stuff, because it has a lot. Of course, it moved Penn State into the championship game against Oregon. It moves Ohio State out of the top 4, right?
Correct.
So it had some implications on the field before, and also it showed that Ohio State probably isn't the best team in the country.
I know. Yeah, that was a tough day for me because I did have them
So did I.
winning the Big Ten. But 5 minutes into the game, I couldn't help but start rooting for Michigan because they were you could tell they were going to do it again. You could tell 5 minutes into the game, like, oh my gosh, Michigan's going to beat these guys. I don't know what's going on with Ryan Day. He can't get out of his own head. The play calling was horrible. Handoff. I don't know what he was trying to prove. I know they showed a stat. The last 7 winners had won the rushing head-to-head, the rushing yards in the game. The winning team had the most rushing yards. So I don't know if he was dead set on trying to outrush Michigan. I don't know, but it was. It wasn't the Ohio State team I'd seen play several times this year, but kudos to Michigan. They just did what Michigan does to Ohio State. Controlled the line of scrimmage. They made a huge mistake there in the red zone towards the end of the game, but man, they just played pretty good football.
I keep saying that secondary and that back 7 is so good that you can never count them out of games. Ryan?
Well, I mean, just Ryan Day, you recruit the top receivers in the country for a reason, and that's to throw the football during games. And he does it every week until the last game of the year against Michigan, and it's just mind-boggling why you're not using those players as weapons. But he seems hell-bent on trying to outrush Michigan and try to be the tougher team. He hates the word finesse, but, I mean, if that's how you win, I'd say embrace that term and win a conference championship. But despite that, he'd rather try to outrush, because the last 7 or 8 games, the team that rushed the most won. So his whole outlook on that game was suspect, and that's why he's like his seat's like not hot, it's sizzling right now.
So the playoffs start this week, actually, with the championship games. And a lot of those games will determine who gets in and who doesn't. Some of them won't, but some of them definitely will. So, and it starts on Friday, Eric?
Yeah, Friday night, UNLV, Boise State. This is a rematch. They played earlier in the year. Boise State won 29-24. Genty rushed for 128 yards in that game.
Wasn't that his lowest of the season?
I think it was. But right now, Boise's 4.5 point. Go figure. This will be a close game, but to me, Boise State's been the better team, the best team in that conference, and I look for them to handle UNLV and not shake up the playoff bracket too much.
Ryan?
I think the same thing. I think Boise State will win this, but they're going to have to rely on Maddox Madsen to pass the ball, because you guys just mentioned the 128 yards. That was his season low, and even low for carries. He only carried for 3.9 yards a rush in that game. So Madsen's going to have to pass the ball effectively, and I think he's capable of doing that. And I think Boise State is going to win, and I hope they do win, because if they don't, it will shake up that bracket on Sunday.
I'm going to go against both of you and say UNLV wins. What else is Friday?
You got Tulane going up against Army, which would have been a really good contest playoff-wise if Tulane hadn't got upset last week. So currently Tulane is not ranked. Army is number 24. So even with a win, Army's not going to be ranked higher than Boise State or UNLV. So this is not a playoff win or a playoff game. This is simply the American Conference Championship on the line. And go Army. I hope they win this game.
All right, Ryan. We've got the first game on Saturday does have playoff implications. Iowa State and Arizona State. That game's at noon.
Yeah, it has huge implications, and one thing that's confusing to me is why they would have the Big 12 conference game at noon, which isn't at like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, their time up there.
I think it's 11. I think it's 11.
I don't know how fair that is, but anyways, both teams coming in at 10-2. Unfortunately for the Big 12, I think they're only going to get one team in, and it's going to be the winner of this game. BYU had a strong hold on that for a while. We were kind of hoping, as Colorado fans and Travis Hunter fans, they might find a way to get into this game. But the winner of this game is going to represent the Big 12 in the playoff championship, or the college football playoff. And I think Arizona State's going to win this game, but they're going to have to watch out for a couple receivers from Iowa State. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, they're the only two receivers in the country that have over 1,000 yards receiving as teammates, and collectively have 15 receiving touchdowns. So they've been a huge weapon, and that's one of the reasons Iowa State's come back here in the last 3 weeks to be in this championship game. So, and they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder being picked 16th overall when the conference preseason rankings. So they made it to the title game here in the Big 12, but I think Arizona State's just too strong offensively, and I look for Arizona State to win this game.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. I think both teams are 10-2, but they come in a little bit different swagger. 10-2. Iowa State has been getting beat up a little bit the last month of the season, losing 2 of their last 4. And Arizona State, I think, now won 7 in a row. So a little bit different teams coming in. Arizona State looks really good to me. I like them in this matchup, and they're a team that you don't get to watch a whole lot of that might make some noise in this playoff if they're able to win Saturday.
If you watch them, they're a lot like Miami's offense under Cam Ward. They're really explosive, and they can put points on the board in a hurry. So I like them in this game. I think they'll win.
The next game in the afternoon is Georgia and Texas. Ryan, you're the SEC guy. Thoughts on this one? Georgia's out, right? If they lose?
Oh, they're definitely out. They're coming in at 10-3, so fourth loss just eliminates them. And
I would think so.
Yeah, Texas is 11-1. They've been in my top 3 the entire season. They're just a solid football team. I think this might be one of the best coaching jobs Sarkisian's done as a head coach. And I know earlier in the year these teams played there in Texas, and Georgia just kind of manhandled them. But I think they're going to take that game as a learning experience. And I look for Texas to bounce back after that loss. If you remember that game, Georgia, their defense looked like last 2 seasons' defense. Texas could not move the ball. The secondary, you could not complete a pass. And then it disappeared the rest of the season for Georgia. So I don't think they're going to find it again tomorrow, and I think Texas is
I don't think they're that good.
Well, that's up for debate, with 3 losses in that conference. So,
and should have been 4.
If Georgia were to find a way to win this game, there's no way Texas is going to get left out. So now you're going to have a 3-loss SEC team guaranteed to be in. That's when Miami and Indiana are going to start getting nervous. So the SEC would love Georgia to win this game so they get more representation. But from an outside team looking in, you want Texas to handle business.
Well, let's back up a minute, because the committee is saying they're not going to punish teams who make the conference championship game. So Georgia is not out if they get beat. Georgia's in. They made the title game, the championship game. They're in. I mean, they've been adamant about that.
I can't imagine that.
I know, but the committee has been adamant about that. How do you put Tennessee ahead of Georgia, and Tennessee didn't even make the SEC championship game?
You wouldn't. But you would move someone else above them.
I understand, but that's not what the committee is saying. I'm telling you what the committee's saying. That's not my opinion.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
They're going to have to prove that to us Sunday.
Yeah. If Georgia loses 4 games and they still put them in, especially after playing 115 overtimes against an okay Georgia Tech team,
who Notre Dame handled on the road.
Yeah.
Right. No, I agree. I'm agreeing with you guys, but I'm just saying that Georgia is not out if they get beat. We will see. We will see.
So are they saying if they lose 35-0, they're still not out?
I know.
I think that's a ridiculous standard. But Ryan,
Well, I mean, just imagine if Georgia didn't win that game against Georgia Tech Saturday night, which, by the way, was a fantastic game. It was one of the most exciting games I've ever watched this year. So, but say they don't win that game and they're sitting here at 9-4, you really think they can lose against Texas and still go in with 5 losses? There's no way.
yeah, crazy, and not just that, but yeah, you're right. They would still be in the SEC championship game. Well, they wouldn't have been in the top 12 then if they'd lost to Georgia Tech. So yeah, that would have changed.
They'd still be in the SEC title game because that's not a conference game.
Right, they're just saying, the committee's just saying it wouldn't affect whether they got in or not.
Right.
But if they had lost last week, they would be outside of the top 12. So, but if they won the SEC championship, they'd still get in. But if they lost the SEC championship, they'd be out.
Correct.
But now
Right.
we're not sure. We have no idea whether they'd be in or out.
Right.
Yeah, it would have had to be a must-win SEC title game for them to be in.
Then at nighttime, we got Clemson SMU, and that could be a big one too, Eric.
Oh, yeah, this is huge. Win and get in for Clemson. I'm hoping that's not the case. SMU, I've watched SMU a few times. I think they are really good.
They are good.
Their quarterback is really fun to watch. I look for SMU to win.
That Dickerson guy.
Yeah, this is going to be a close game, though. Dabo will have them ready to go. I mean, it's a big game. Clemson's going to keep it close, I think. But as we mentioned, I mean, if Clemson wins, I think SMU stays in based on what we just argued about.
But with that being the case, they could argue, if they're saying that SMU, only one of them was going to get in. You know, SMU would. I would imagine that's a little different scenario because they would say that the ACC only deserves one representative, and now it's Clemson.
That's not the case. If that was the precedent,
that could be the case. No, but how many ACC teams are in right now?
None.
Just one would be in because
one.
Right. So if Clemson beats SMU, Clemson will take SMU's spot. Would be what I would imagine.
Right, but then again, you got an undefeated conference. That would be 2 losses for SMU.
Right.
We're gonna see how this plays out because it's gonna be a mess. If Clemson,
it would be fun.
Yeah.
It would be fun for us.
I just think everyone's going to be rooting for SMU in this game. If your team's in the top 14,
That's right.
You got to have SMU win.
Right. If you're Alabama, Indiana, Tennessee, you really want SMU and Boise State to take care of business.
And I want IU to get in, but I really want the upsets. I think that would be fun. Although I like SMU so much more than Clemson that I probably won't be able to cheer for Clemson.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a close game. But if you're a fan of college football and one of your teams is projected to be in or slightly in, you're going to be rooting heavily for SMU.
And now to the coup de grace, the Big Ten Championship. Not quite as big as we expected it to be last week, but still really big. Number 1 versus number 3. And again, Eric, you're saying the seeding won't be affected by this either. So,
what, the playoff picture seeding?
Yeah, will not be affected by the Big Ten Championship game.
Seeding will be affected. The teams that get
Just
in,
okay.
They're both going to stay in. But right now you have Oregon at number 1 and Penn State
Right, so they would pass them.
Right. Penn State would go arguably to the number 1 seed.
I would imagine.
And
yeah.
Oregon would drop to number 5, I would think, is how that would work out. Because they can't be in the top 4.
So their performance will count for something, but the result won't? Because could Texas jump? Would Penn State jump Texas? How would...
No, well, okay.
If Texas won. So you're saying they'd be 1 or 2?
They'd be 1 or 2. Yeah, because Texas would still be in there. As long as if they beat Georgia.
Right.
But in this Big Ten game, I mean, it's only fitting. You got the number 1 offense and the number 2 offense, the number 3, number 4 defense going up against one another. I had been waiting for a rematch of the Ohio State Oregon game on a neutral field. That's not going to happen.
But this is still a really good
But
one.
there's a lot more than just the Big Ten championship on the line. You look at what James Franklin has dealt with. This is an opportunity for him to get some heat off of him. Go in there and win this game. I think he's 1-11 versus the top teams, Ohio State and Michigan. He's never won the big game since he's been at Penn State. We've been on him the last few weeks saying, they got another loss in them. We've been waiting on them to get beat again. And they sneak in this game really with Ohio State losing to Michigan. But I think this is going to be a good game. I think Penn State will keep it a lot closer than people think. Right now, I think it's only 3.5. Yeah, Oregon minus 3.5. So I'm going to root for Penn State in this game. I never thought I would say that, but I am. I want to see Penn State win.
Until James Franklin wins a close game, I'm never going to expect Penn State to win a big game. So
right.
I know it's 3.5 right now. I'd be fine at 6.5 and think Oregon's going to be okay in this game. I just don't have a lot of faith in them ever winning. We haven't seen it in 6 seasons of him winning a big game. So
right, you're a pretender until you're not. Prove me. You're a pretender until you prove me wrong. I've said that about Penn State before.
When was the last time Oregon was really impressive?
Well, they made the title game against Auburn and Cam Ward.
No. This year. When was a game where they were like, oh, man, Oregon looked good today? It's been a while. I'm not sure they're that good. They might be. But this is a conversation I had earlier in the week, I think, with Mike Rich. Is there a team that you look at and say there's no weakness? Is there a matchup this year in particular that you could see in the playoffs and go, I know that team's going to win? I don't think there's a single one.
I think there's been a couple of glimpses of it.
Sure.
I think the first half, Georgia-Texas was insane. Georgia looked like...
But they haven't looked like that since.
Nope. And then the first half, Alabama-Georgia, how good Alabama looked.
Yeah, and they haven't looked like that since.
No.
They looked like they were a completely different athletic level than Georgia, and now it's just gone.
Yeah, it was totally uneven. I mean, talent-wise, speed, everything looked totally unfair.
It did. For the first half, at least.
Right.
Well, I think there's one thing the three of us can agree on, though, is that starting Friday and into Saturday night, it's going to be great football to watch. And then come Sunday, there's going to be a lot of happy people and a lot of ticked off people.
Well, we won't have an undefeated team not make the playoff like we did last year.
Yes.
So.
that's a good thing. I think Florida State would be safe this year with that.
I think so.
Man, you talk about an event that just deflated a program. Holy cow. Let's start with the coaching news. Ball State has hired a coach. Butler's head coach. Not a lot of... We'll see. We'll talk about Ball State football when they deserve it. But also Purdue football, which doesn't deserve it right now either. But they're going to need a coach to help us pay attention to them again.
Right.
Got an idea?
I've got some... Well, I mean... You can look it up. It's all out there. All the speculation's out there.
First, we should mention that, in case somebody doesn't know, Indiana just beat Purdue 418-0, I think it was. So
yeah.
Actually, Indiana just scored again.
So let me start by asking you both. Let's rewind to 1 year ago. Okay, we got to eliminate what's happened this year. Is the Purdue or IU head football coaching job better? Which one is better? If you're a coach wanting to take one of them, which one's better?
50-50.
Can I start?
I would argue Purdue's a better job.
50-50. Yeah, it depends on the pay, I would think. But yeah, I would probably be Purdue a little, 53-47, but about the same.
Okay. That being said, IU did get their guy, obviously. I think this is a huge opportunity for Purdue.
Yes.
I'm going to put a name out there that you guys are going to not know. But right now, let's just talk about what's all out there in the news. Tyson Helton at Western Kentucky. I mean, he's followed Jeff Brom taking over that program. We all know Brown went to West Lafayette. Tim Albin, name getting thrown around a lot, from Ohio. He's turned that program around. Barry Odom, and we talked about UNLV earlier. Barry Odom's done a great job at UNLV. But my guy that I would go after would be Jamie Chadwell. He's currently the head coach at Liberty. He took over that program when Hugh Freeze went to Auburn. Last year, if you recall, he was 11-0 and played in the Fiesta Bowl. He had Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. And this year, they were ranked again. And he started, a few years ago, there was a small team on the East Coast, Coastal Carolina, that he had undefeated and really almost in the Final Four. People were really pushing for them in the playoff, college football playoff picture. This guy's a huge offensive mind. He's a quarterback guy. If Purdue doesn't take a hard look at this guy, they're going to make it. Somebody's going to get him, and Purdue better jump on it.
Those kind of hires are always hit and miss, and when it works out, it's a great story. And thank God the IU hire is working out. But you're going to have some coaches at some big schools now that might have worn out their welcome. And I know, Eric, you love Kyle Whittingham. What's the shot of someone like him, or like, say, Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, being interested in the Purdue job and moving to the Big Ten?
I'd love Mike Gundy.
I don't think they're going to get a big name or an established head coach. I don't.
I think usually when schools fail going one way, they usually go the other way. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did try a big name.
But speaking of Gundy, though, he just fired all his coordinators, so he's keeping his job, obviously, or he would have. Yeah, he just fired a bunch of coaches at Oklahoma State. He's gonna rebuild his staff.
But I think somebody like that might be something that they try, because I don't think they've tried that since Fred Akers back in the 80s after he'd led Texas to a national championship. Might be something different.
Well, Eric Bieniemy just got fired today.
UCLA fired Bieniemy. Well, Purdue did take a shot at a head coach from a small school years ago, and it worked out pretty good.
That's right.
Joe Tiller.
And it also worked out with Jeff Brown.
It did.
Yep.
We'll see what happens, but let's see what happens with Jamie Chadwell. He's going to end up somewhere.
Or, this is a good segue, they could bring back Brock Spack, who was their offensive coordinator under Tiller, who has led the Illinois State Redbirds.
I knew you'd find a way.
To the Sweet 16 in the actual real tournament that's been going on for years. They play at Cal Davis on Saturday. By the way, Winkers scored a touchdown, had a big game in the semifinal round.
I'm going to stay on you until we get a Winkers signed jersey hanging here in Studio 22.
Well, it's going to happen. And but he was injured at the end of the game, hurt his shoulder, the same shoulder that he had out last year. But it seems like he says he's okay to play. He's a little tougher than he probably should be sometimes, but he's going to play. They go to Cal Davis in the Sweet 16 this Saturday, and with a win, they would play a North Dakota team they just beat the last game of the regular season. So could be a really big run for the Redbirds. Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to change here. It's a two-man race. Travis Hunter and Genty for Boise State. If Boise State can win and he puts on a show Friday night, I think it's advantage Genty, obviously.
I don't think he's going to. I think UNLV is the best defense he's played against, and we'll see.
They held him to like 34, 35 yards in the first half, the first game. He finished with 128, but they had his number. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Ryan?
Well, Travis Hunter, he's the best player in the country. We all agree on that, but his season's over. I mean, his bowl game's going to take place after that award gets handed out.
Yeah, and he likely won't even play in it.
Yeah.
Why would he?
So you got Genty and you got Dylan Gabriel, who might be kind of hovering there still around the third spot in my voting, but Genty and Gabriel still have one game to still kind of state their case. So the award should go to Travis Hunter. I just don't think it's going to, just based on the fact his season's over. We'll see what happens.
All right, guys. We are going to do a reaction podcast on Sunday to talk about the brackets, the three of us, to get Eric and Ryan's reaction. Please let everybody know, if you're listening to this, that we're going to be doing that pretty close to right after the brackets are out. It's going to be about 10 minutes after. We're going to try to get a 10-minute podcast just to get their reaction and to let you know what's going on, and look forward to doing that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that should be fun. There should be plenty to talk about too, so I can't wait.
Thanks again, Eric and Ryan, for doing this. Always appreciate it, and thanks to everyone for listening. Please go like, subscribe, or follow us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and now streaming on YouTube. So, that would be fantastic if you do that. Go right now and do that. Unless you're driving, pull over to the side of the road if you're driving. Like, subscribe, or follow us. And also, this podcast is growing very fast. It'll grow even faster if you tell a friend. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Thanks, Ryan. Oh, one more thing. The Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.